Hello and welcome to the Aerocycles channel. Today we're going to be bringing you another build video. This time it will be of the specialised Levo SL Carbon, which is actually my personal bike, which I've been riding for a while now. This bike has got the carbon frame, but the SL version means it's super light. So it has a smaller battery and a smaller motor, comparable to some of the other e-bikes that you can buy out there. Now, although most people think that the first thing you want is the biggest battery and the strongest power, it's not always the case. The fastest car around a race course isn't always the one with the biggest engine. Because this loses a lot of weight, this particular model in this spec is actually weighing only at 18 kilograms. It actually rides more like a normal bike. So when you actually come to the downhill parts or jumping or going down some of the trails, the bike reacts and feels much more like a normal bike. But yet then when you come to the hills, you've got a lighter bike with assistance helping you back up. For me, it's the perfect blend. I don't want something like a big 25, 26 kg bike with a 700 amp hour battery on there, because that just feels like a tank. So for me personally, and it is a personal preference thing, this suits my liking. I've done rides on this bike now around Lake District and up in Scotland. I've done a 30-mile Peak District ride, and I got back to the end of the ride still with enough battery after 30 miles with nearly 3,000 feet of climbing. So if I needed to go further than that, the great thing about this bike is you can also put an extender on there, which is something you can't do with many other bikes. But because it's light and nimble, it rides more like I remember normal bikes riding. So that's why I made my choice. So it's always worth going to your shop, speaking to the brands that you're looking at and trying to make sure that the bike you're getting is the one that's going to suit your needs and desires. So today we're going to be fitting as much Hope stuff onto this bike as possible. So it's definitely Hope cap on today, as we're going to be fitting new transmission, but also new wheels, brakes, bars, and all the little finishing parts that go from Hope. So let's nip over to the counter and I'll show you through all the bits that we've got going on the bike. Right, so let's start with the bars. As we did with the other build, I'm going to go with the Hope carbon handlebars. I've used these on my other bike. I really like the slight amount of raise and the width of these bars. They're a great weight and they're a really good price as well when you look at proper good quality named carbon bars. So the bars are going on there. I'll then be pairing it up with a Hope stem. This will be a 90, which is longer than the one that's actually standard on the bike, but I do prefer a slightly longer bike, so we're going to be going with this 90 on there. And then we're going to also be going with a pair of ergon grips. Now, grips are a very personal choice. Some people like them to be sticky and an extra grippy. Me personally, I like the fat grips for big hands. I prefer that bigger diameter. I tend to find that my hands don't get as numb as quickly when using the larger grips, and I just generally have a bit more control over the bike. So that will set up the front cockpit of the bike. Then moving on to one of the more fun parts, and that will be the brakes. Again, because this is an e-bike, we are going to go on big power. We've got large tyres on there with a lot of grip. I'm not a lightest of riders. The bike's, as we said before, is about 18 kgs, so we're going to want a lot of stopping power. So I'm going to go with a 220 front floating Hope rotor with a 200 rear floating rotor, and pairing that up with the brand new release of the Tech 4 V4s. So this is the brand new released lever, which is gaining you about 25% more power over previous versions. And then the new V4 caliper, which has got the new stainless steel covered Philonic pistons, reducing that stiction. So really looking forward to having a go on these. We've sold several pairs so far to other customers in the E4s and V4s, and they've all said how amazing they are. So this, I think, will be the perfect combination for that bike. Moving on to the wheels, we'll be building the wheels rather than going for a wheel set. So we'll be going with a Pro 4 rear hub and then that will be paired up on DT spokes, and we've been very lucky to get hold of a pair of carbon Rovel wheels. Rovel obviously is specialised in-house brand of components, and this normally would come as a complete wheel set, but I've been able to pull some strings and get these rims which we're going to build onto the Hope hubs to keep in with the theme of this build, but also as well not move too far away from specialised equipment. So this will be the first part that we'll put together. We're going to go with black spokes, but just where the valve is, we're going to split that out and put a couple of silver spokes. So we're going to fit some muck-off tubeless valves, muck-off tubeless rim tape. So we're also going to mount one of the muck-off air tag holders. So this will be inside more than likely the rear tyre, and this will allow us to track the bike if it got stolen. So that is going to build up our complete wheel set. We are going to use the tyres that are currently on the bike. Again, the specialised tyres, you can't really say a bad thing about them. They're half the price to some of the bigger names that would compare against them, and me personally, I think they ride better than all of them. The tubeless capabilities are as good as any out there, and the grip levels and control is the best that I've experienced. So we're going to stick with the original tyres on the bike and set them up on these wheels. Now, originally, when we first started to plan this build, we was going to build the bike onto some XT 12 speed, and I've changed my mind on this at last minute. So now we're going to go with a Eagle GX Axs kit. This is a wireless transmission gear shift, so it's electronic gear shifting. This kit comes with the rear derailleur, the shifter, and the battery charger, so we can mount this to the bike and achieve wireless shifting. I've been fitting a few of these as they've become available this year, and I just love the features that you get with them. We're going to also sync this to the Garmin, which will give us the gear ratios and also display the gear selected while riding with this system. So again, it was going to be on the XT system, which is a great 12-speed system, but I just think that this was more in keeping with what we're trying to achieve today. Then for the pedals, on my Diverge, I have been running the new Hope race pedals. So I've decided to move one step further with the e-bike, and we're going with the trail pedal. So I'll be able to use the same shoes as I use with both bikes, and we'll be able to clip in with whichever shoe we are wearing that particular day. This trail pedal just gives you a little bit more of a platform to quickly find your grip if you've been unclipped. So these are going to be the pedals of choice for this particular build. So we're also going to change the saddle out on the bike as well. There is currently a power saddle already on there, but I do really like the 3D printed power mirror saddle that's just been released from Specialized. It's not a cheap option, but it is something that I do feel comfortable on, and this will be going on the build to finish it off. Then there's just a few finishing touches from Hope. So some silver bar ends. We've got our brake mounts so we can run the correct size of rotor. We've got some headset spacers, and then also we have a seat clamp in silver as well. So with all these silver bits on there on a black frame, we really hope that they all pop and look really good. So I guess it's just time now to just get down to the workshop. Let's start taking the bike to bits and get those wheels built. Right, so before we can build the wheels, we need to know the spoke length. The spoke lengths can vary massively to the size of wheel that you're using, the particular brand of rim, the number of spokes, the hub that you're using, the number of crosses that you wish to build the wheel on. There's lots of variations. So the best way is to measure all of those, pop them into a website and see what spoke length that comes out with. Although there is quite a few to choose from, the one that I usually use is Pro Wheel Builder. I find that one does come out with some of the best results. So the first thing it's asking for is the ERD, the effective rim diameter. This is quite easy to measure, however quite often you will find it printed somewhere on the rim, but on this particular one it's not. So to measure it, we just grab 2 spokes. These are both measured and cut specifically to 200 millimeters. Then you pop the spoke in to the rim on 2 opposing spoke holes, and then take a ruler and measure the gap that's left between the 2 spokes. In this case it's 190 millimeters. So with that, knowing that each spoke is 200, 400 plus 180, that's 190, sorry. So that's 590 millimeter. So we just pop that in on the effective rim. Then it's asking for details of the hub. Now, one thing I do like about this website is it has presets of all the common hubs. But the things that make the difference is the overall width of the hub, the width between the 2 flanges, the distance from the edge to the first flange, the diameter of the flange, and obviously, again, as we were saying earlier, the number of spokes. So I know that this is going to be a 28 spoke build. Quite commonly wheels are 32, but again, when you're building a custom wheel set, you can have that varying quite a bit. So we need to select the 28 on there. This is obviously the rear hub. The front one again would need to be measured separately. And we've got a Hope, and this is a Pro 4 boost, so it's 148 mil, and we're going to use a 3-cross lace pattern. We'll touch on that in a short time. So that has now populated all of our sizes. Obviously, if it's not in the list, you can quite easily get a set of verniers and measure all the relevant sizes, but try and be as exact as you can with this. Don't just use a tape measure and say that will do. Any slight miscalculations on measuring the hub will have quite a big influence on your overall spoke length, and you could end up building a wheel to find out that you can't get it tensioned correctly. So if you do measure it manually, take a lot of time and care to get that just perfectly right. So I accept the terms and conditions of this, and we'll click calculate, and it's coming up with a left side of 290 and a right hand side of 289. We have got a little bit of leeway on this, and I'm just going to round this to 290 on both sides. It's quite good with Hope. They often do end up having very similar size spokes on both sides of the wheel. Some companies that have different size flanges on one side to the other, you'll end up with a radically different spoke length, but they all do it for their own individual reasons. But this has come out fairly even, so if we want to build the rim smack in the middle of the hub, it's going to need a 290 left hand right hand side, and we'll just quickly do the front wheel now and get that sorted. So now we have our spoke calculations all done and ready, and we need to start building the wheel. And one thing I just want to quickly run through is how we're going to align the wheels. Now the rear one I'm going to build asymmetric, so this has been calculated to only make a 1% difference in strength, so it really isn't a big problem. So if you're going to go running out and having a look at your rear wheel to see whether it's built correctly or not, is minor, and certain rim and wheel manufacturers do recommend and have different policies, but I'm going to go with the way I've always done it, and I'm going to build the rear one asymmetric. So when you look at a hub flange, you'll have some of your spokes will go in from one direction, and the next spoke will go in from the other direction, and this is so we can lace the wheel up correctly. Okay, now the spoke that comes from the inside of the hub is what I call the power spoke. It is the one that can take the most amount of pressure before it breaks. And if you think about how a hub works, when you drive the sprocket round, the hub is twisted, having to pull the rim around the wheel. So if we have this spoke here on the inside facing backwards, then that is giving the strongest spoke the ability to be able to take the load. Bear in mind as well that we have got an electric bike, so we have got that extra torque going on there. And again, this will only make about a 1% difference, but by having the spoke on the inside and that wheel turning this way, that will give us the strongest option for drive. But in recent years, we've now got disc brakes, and the thing with a disc brake is that works the opposite way. So when you grab the brake, effectively what you're doing is stopping the wheel and having to stop the rim as well. So on the other side, we're going to have the inside spoke going the opposite way, so that when we grab the brake, our strongest spoke is there to help slow the wheel down. So we're going to build this 3 cross as well, so that will basically mean that the spoke will cross 3 others on its way from the hub to the rim, and then that will give us our wheel build. The front wheel we'll build symmetric, so because there's no drive rotation on the front wheel, we will build the spokes both in the same direction, so that when we grab that front brake, we've got maximum strength there in a braking orientation. There's not really any big resistance on it when freewheeling. Right, now to the workshop. So here we are in the workshop. Well, this actually is the warehouse, because we build so many wheels and true so many wheels here at Aracycles. Rather than having the wheel jig moved from bench to bench in the workshop, we leave the 3 work base clear and then have one unified workplace here for doing wheel builds and truing. So yeah, this is a little bit behind the scenes, if you like, but I'm going to get everything set up here, then we're going to get started with this wheel build. Here you'll see the first spoke going in. It's critical to get this one right, as it sets the scene for all the other spokes going in. So take great care in trying to find the right spoke and the right orientation on this one. Then the rest sort of tend to just fall into place as you move around the wheel, following a normal pattern and lacing up the wheel. That's the first side now, just about complete. And then it's a case of turning the wheel over and matching up the other side. Again, this first spoke going in can make or break the other side spoke pattern, but with a little bit of care and understanding, you'll soon have that mastered. Building wheels is something I find really enjoyable. There's just something about taking the pack of spokes and the hub and the rim and creating a wheel out of it. Here you can see it goes into the wheel jig, and I'm using the quick driver just to take all the spokes down to a standard position within the rim. This is the easiest way I find to get the wheel into a starting position. Now we've grabbed the spoke key and we're going round the wheel, giving all the spokes a turn until we start feeling the tension on it. And you'll see me every now and again just check the guide and look through the guide of the wheel jig just to see how the wheel's looking. So we keep going round, just putting a little bit more tension on the wheel, and keep going around all the spokes one at a time, putting a little bit more, and slowly you bring the wheel into tension. And all the time you need to make sure that the wheel is staying straight and not going into an egg shaped. So here, the eagle eyes of you, you'll see me actually plucking the spokes. This is my way of hearing the tension around the wheel. I'll pluck the spoke like a guitar string and listen to the tone that it makes, and then I'll be able to hear if any of them are higher or lower than the one next to it, and then I adjust the wheel accordingly. A wheel that is in good tension will have the spokes nearly all the same. Here you can see me stressing the wheel, getting any little kinks out, and we've just quickly put the spoke tension gauge on there to see where we are on the spoke tensions, and I'll continue just going around the wheel until we've got it correct. So we'll start by removing the old wheels, and we'll split the chain and remove the old derailleur. Whip the old pedals off, don't need those anymore, and we'll start just disconnecting some of the parts on the handlebars. Remove the stem cap, undo the bars, and then on goes the new stem. Next the bars go on, and then we can loosely mount the brake levers roughly where they'll need to be. Grips go on, that gives us then a bit more of an idea on where the levers need to be, and then we can cut the hose down to the right amount, making sure that we can achieve full lock and not run out of hose length. From that point we can get the rear caliper mounted, on with the rear wheel, and then pop the derailleur and the chain back on, then on with the front wheel, and now here we have to bleed the brake because we've split the hose to mount it through the frame. We've introduced a little bit of air, so no big issues, just quick bleed on the rear brake. Popping on the new trail pedals, then it's time to insert the battery into the derailleur. Protective cap then clips over the top, and here you'll find we're just going to set up the depth of the derailleur with the depth gauge. So just by adjusting the B tension we can align the top jockey wheel pivot bolt into the little window. Connecting it all to the app is quite straightforward, and we can also check for updates, and then once the updates are complete we can go into the fine-tune mode where we can then trim the gears. Quick check the gears up and down, trim them as needed, make sure the high and low stops have been set correctly, and we're good to go. Quick tip, remove the bolt from the seat clamp so you don't have to remove the cable from the dropper post. Slide the seat clamp onto the bike, then just pop the seat post back into the frame and then reinstall the seat clamp bolt. Out with the torque wrench, we'll grab the 4mm first and tune the torque wrench to 5 Newton meters and start on the handlebars. Here we are on the stem bolts, so each bolt one by one till the torque wrench clicks out, then moving on to the brake levers, pulling it tighter, clicks out there, perfect. Popping a 5mm onto the torque wrench, turning up the torque a little bit, doing the seat clamp, and then we'll also do the caliper bolts as well while we're at it. So that's it. The bike is now finished. We've managed to get all the parts on there. We only had one little hiccup, and that was we was going to put a 220mm rotor on the front, and didn't realise that this particular fork is a 160 native, so we're unable to make a 60mm jump, so we've gone to a 200 rotor to make a 40mm jump. Minor things though. Overall everything's gone really well. We've got the gears all set up. I'm just about to sync those to the Garmin so we can get all the information that we need on that, and then we'll get a couple of nice photos of it. And fortunately this weekend coming we're over at Gisborne, which is actually the home testing track of Hope, so what better place to go and to test and ride this bike than up there. So hope you follow with us, and we'll get some nice photos of the bike done now and get out there and ride it.